Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I'm Victor and I'm going over my project for R. Um, my focus was on the impact. I guess it was a comprehensive look at the contributions of Dominican players to both team level performance and individual pitcher performance in the MLB. I used regression, K-means clustering, and age clustering to uncover some insights on Dominican players' impact on team success. And we use clustering to create performance profiles for the pitchers. So part one is going to be the regression model. Part two and three is going to be the clustering. So let's get into it. Two things. I'll try to keep it as least painful as possible, and I will be rotating my head a lot because of all the screens. But I'm going to try to just read up the code so it's not too awful on everyone. So my two research questions were, do Dominican players significantly impact team performance in terms of win percentage, home runs, and run score? And can Dominican pitchers be segmented into distinct performance profiles? And what are the key characteristics of each group, right? So let's get to it. So we start with part one. We got our libraries, boom. Then we're going to start collecting the data. I chose to use the library because I didn't want to scrape 5 years worth of data on the website. So I'm trying to work on improving how to use these libraries to get my data. So we start with this, we preview it. So we collected the data. The data, we chose the specific categories, right? And we also created the win percentage category. Then we count the Dominican players per team and year with 350 at-bats. So I chose to filter it that way. I wanted the players that were playing and hitting a lot to show up here. Then we merge those two, so now we have our full data set here as far as that. We calculate the percentage of Dominican players based on the 25-man roster, and then you get this bad boy, right? So you get to see the players and the percentage at the end. So these are the columns we created. So we go from there and we do our summary statistics, and we get the standard deviation just to see what that was like here. And then we finally get to the models. The models, of course, as we all know, come out like this, and then we plot them, and they came out like this. So let me talk about them for a little bit now. So in part one, what was interesting was, right, we use win percentage, home runs, run score, ERA, and strikeouts. For the first model, win percentage, right, it was a weak but positive relationship between the percentage of Dominican players and the team's win percentage, but very minimal. All 5 of them were minimal. For the second one, home runs, teams with a higher percentage of Dominicans tend to hit slightly more home runs, minimal. Run score, Dominican players contribute to slightly higher run production, but again, minimal. ERA was one where the percentage of Dominican players didn't have a significant impact on the team's ERA. And then strikeout, a higher percentage of Dominican players was associated with a slight decline in strikeout. Again, marginal, very small. So that was the result for our part one. We filtered, we got everything. We found our percentages, and then we started to model it and to see if there was anything, but nothing of big significance. So then I wanted to focus on the pitchers, right? So let's cluster the pitchers and see if all Dominican pitchers are all like the same in a sense, right? Or can we find some distinguishable characteristics and stats about them? So we collected the data, we standardize it, we apply it, we set the seed, of course. So, for the data, you have the birth country, the art, little things like this you gotta look into. Like this was converted into the innings pitch. And then I put 50 in its pitch minimum. Then we standardize like always. We set the C, and we chose 3. That's because later we did find that that's the optimal number, but I do have that code a little further down. And so we do that, and then we visualize it, right? ERA, strikeout, pretty straightforward. Group cluster 3 is the best cluster. They have the most strikeouts and the lowest ERA. While cluster 1 and 2, 1 being the worst and 2 being moderate, would have less strikeout and higher ERAs. So cluster 3 will be fun to look into more in theory. So then we did the elbow to discover that 3 is the max, the ideal number of cluster, right? So our findings show in here that we use strikeouts, ERAs, walks, home runs allowed, and home runs. We use K-mean clustering to make the groups, the clusters. The elbow to reinforce that 3 was the right one. Then we visualize the findings. Cluster 1 was poor performance. Cluster 3 was the tough performing pitchers. And that is our part 2. Then we move to part 3, age clustering. So this was just to provide a more flexible way to group the same set of pitchers, right? Same pitchers. It's a little different just to see if we see anything there. So we start with everything. We collect the same pitching data with the same 50. We standardize it. We do the distance matrix, and then we do a age clustering, and then we visualize it. We get this. This chart's a little different than what we learned in class, but I will break that down. And let's do that one first. So for this one, we standardized the metrics and we calculated it's called the Euclidean distance matrix. Then we used the WARS method and performed the age clustering, right? So the key finding was that it also identified 3 distinct clusters, similar to the K, so that's interesting. And then it helped me visualize how clusters were nested and how pitches were grouped based on their performance at multiple levels, right? So, to get a little more detail on that, here. So this was to analyze, Dominican pitchers, right? So the low-high merges, you'll notice that some pitches get merged into clusters really early, which means their performance metrics like strikeouts and ERA are quite similar. Then the high merges, as you move higher up the tree, you'll see clusters merging at greater heights, which indicates that this group of pitches are more distinct from one another, right? So that's kind of how you would visualize that. And it's a great tool to group the pitches together. That's what we got down for that chart, that plot. Then we move down, and then we assign cluster memberships, 3. We visualize it. We perform the PCA. I did learn this when I was doing my UFC project. And then we plot the first 2 principal components, and we get these new different visualization, because I thought this visualization was a bit tough here as well. So now let's talk about this one. This one's really fun. So cluster 1 is strikeout. This group has the highest number of strikeouts, 160. The ERA, pitchers in this group have the lowest ERA at 310, indicating that they allow fewer earned runs. And then the bases and home run, they have also the lowest number of walks and the numbers of runs allowed. This group consists of the best performing pitchers who strike out most batters and allow fewer runs or walks and home runs. So group 1 is the best group. Then cluster 2. So this group represents pitchers in the mid-level. This group has an intermediate number of strikeouts at 110. Pitchers have a moderate ERA of 4.43 compared to the 3.10. And then they allow more walks at 71.67 and home runs at 15.3 compared to 9. And then cluster 3 would be our lowest performing pitchers who struggle. Here we have the lowest number of strikeouts at 85. They went under 100. We also have the ERA at 5.13. It's wild. And we also have the highest number of walks at 87. And runs allowed at 20 compared to 9 on group 1, 15 on group 2. So the conclusion here is that, so now I'm going to give you guys an overall conclusion. So throughout the project, we set to explore how Dominican players, especially pitchers, once we got to the second part, contribute to their teams and how we can group these players based on metrics, performance metrics, right? Like finding groups. So in part 1, we did our regression. We picked offensive metrics, and we saw how small of an impact most of the metrics had. An impact nevertheless, one way or another, but a small one. We then so in conclusion, each plot confirmed the findings, but their overall relationships are not strong enough to make a definitive conclusion on any of the 5 plots for the regression analysis. So it was weak one way or the other. Then when we got to the clustering, we were able to find that 3 was the right amount of clusters, and we were able to understand that in cluster 1 it's low strikeouts, high ERA. Cluster 2 is moderate. Cluster 3 is high strikeouts, low ERA. So we did have enough data points to create that separation. So then in the last model in the H clustering, we took a different approach. This method let us explore how clusters are nested. So understanding like picture similarities. So yeah, the dendrogram gives a visual representation of how pictures group together based on their performance metric. The height of the branches indicates how different pitches are from one another. And then the lower branches represent pitches with similar performance metric. And then higher branches, more distinct differences between the groups. We identified 3 clusters. The visualization takeaway, we confirmed that the cluster result match our earlier K-means results. So we were able to answer our research questions. I have no time left. The result from part 1 suggests that Dominican players do have a positive influence on the team performance metric, like home runs and run score, even though it's not overwhelmingly strong. And then in the second one, can Dominican pitchers be segmented into different profiles? The analysis from part 2 and 3 successfully segmented Dominican pitchers into 3 performing profiles. And these profiles have provided valuable insights into how teams may assess their strategy. Running out of time. Thank you guys. Thanks for watching.